Good evening, and thank you for joining us. My name is Betsy McShane, and I am the state biologist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service here in New Jersey. And I'd like to welcome you to our fourth presentation in our Working Lands for Wildlife webinar series. This evening's presentation is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on our YouTube channel. A link to the recording will be provided in the chat. This webinar series is a joint effort between NRCS and several partner organizations that work together to restore wildlife habitat on private lands here in New Jersey. Throughout the series, we will chat with different partner biologists to discuss their work and the particular species that they focus on. Each session will be held on Microsoft Teams beginning at 7 p.m. Presentations will last around 30 to 45 minutes, and there'll be time for a question and answer session at the end. While we welcome you to join in the conversation during the Q&A, we would appreciate it if you would mute your microphone in the meantime to reduce the background noise. Thank you very much. And just a little bit about some of our presenters in this series. I kicked off the series with an introduction to NRCS and our conservation programs through the Working Lands for Wildlife initiative. Then we had a presentation from Ben Lange, who is a Working Lands partner biologist with Ducks Unlimited, and he talked about black duck ecology and conservation. Last week, Katie DiPaolo from the New Jersey Audubon talked about northern bobwhite quail ecology and conservation. Tonight, we'll be hearing from Marc Virgilio from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and their work on bog turtle ecology and conservation. Next week, we're going to have a presentation from Sharon Petzinger. Sharon is a senior biologist with the New Jersey Fish and Wildlife Endangered Non-Game Species Program. And Sharon will be talking with us about golden wing warblers. And last but not least, Olivia Matisse, our Mid-Atlantic pollinator specialist with the Xerces Societies for Invertebrate Conservation, will join us on March 4th to discuss pollinator ecology and conservation. We would like to remind you to register for each of the events in this series. We'll provide a link to the Eventbrite website in the chat where you can sign up for upcoming Wednesdays. Make sure to click on each date to register individually for the topics that are of interest to you. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker for this evening. Marc Virgilio has worked the last 8 years for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Partners for Fish and Wildlife program here in New Jersey. As the state coordinator for the program, he provides assistance to private landowners, nonprofit organizations, and local municipalities to create and restore habitat for federal trust species, such as endangered species, migratory birds and fish, at-risk and also at-risk species. The Partners Program's work covers a wide range of the diverse habitats here in New Jersey, from grassland, pollinator field restoration, invasive plant control, wetland restoration, and river restoration or dam removals. 2 focal species for restoration have been the federally listed threatened plant swamp pink and bog turtle. New Jersey is considered a stronghold for both species, containing some of their most critical respective habitats. And with that, I'd like to welcome Marc Virgilio.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Bessie, for the introduction, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Very excited to talk to you all about bog turtle this evening. I hope I don't come off too excited. Growing up, my 2 favorite things to talk about were basically turtles and farm equipment and heavy equipment, and I'm basically living my childhood dream. So very, very happy to be talking to you all about this today, and bog turtle and what we do here in New Jersey. Before I dive into it, I just want to give a quick background on the Working Lands for Wildlife Partnership that Betsy was speaking about as part of our wildlife series. It is an initiative under NRCS that works with partners and private landowners on voluntary conservation efforts across the United States. NRCS providing the bulk of the work through technical and financial assistance, focusing on agricultural producers. Here in New Jersey, we have four species that are our focal species, typically chosen based on species that obviously exist in the state and can serve as bellwethers for general habitat quality and environmental health. So, to go back to my program and what the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program is, I kind of should say who is the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program because it is such a collaborative effort. But very similar to what I was just referring to with the Working Lands for Wildlife program, um, my program under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is a voluntary on-the-ground habitat restoration program that provides support to private landowners, municipalities, nonprofit organizations, basically anybody under state level ownership that needs help and has what we call a federal trust resource on the property. So anything that there's federal interest in is basically fair game for our program. Things that are on the endangered species list, things that cross state lines like migratory birds, migratory fishes, and things that we consider at-risk species, things that aren't endangered yet, but we kind of foresee based on trends becoming endangered in the near future. That could be things like certain pollinators, like the monarch butterfly. And so the goals of my program, in addition to implementing habitat improvement projects for those trust resources, is to promote partnerships. I'm going to say the word partner a lot, both with a capital P for my program and kind of lowercase p for the various partners we work with. And as well as encouraging public understanding and participation. We recognize that, especially here in New Jersey, over 70% of lands are in private ownership. And we cannot move the needle to protect and restore these species without working with private landowners and nonprofit organizations. So getting into the turtle facts for bog turtle, it is the smallest turtle in North America. The adults only get up to about 4 inches in their carapace, top of their shell from top to bottom. So a very, very small turtle. It is also the state reptile of New Jersey. Back in, I believe, 2018, a local elementary school in Princeton, New Jersey, um, petitioned the government. Whoops, hold on one second here. Can y'all see what I'm staring? Apologies.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, there we go.
You're on slide 7.
There we go.
Slide 8.
So our bog turtle facts. Smallest turtle in North America, the state reptile of New Jersey, thanks to elementary school in Princeton. There are basically two populations in the state of New Jersey, kind of split up by the middle of the state. We have our North Jersey population up in like the Sussex, Hunterdon, Passaic County areas, and then we have our southern populations down like the Salem County area. They're basically they exist in very similar habitats. Geologically they form differently. The difference between kind of the mountains of Sussex County and the coastal plains of Salem County, but they exist in the same general habitat. And they are, as I said, federally and state protected due to significant population declines and habitat loss. Really coming down to development, changes in plant succession, as well as in invasive species that we've introduced that are kind of crowding out the existing habitat. Here's just like a bigger picture of that slide. You can kind of see the green here is the existing kind of known bog turtle range, with the kind of the red hash mark being the historic range where it was historically known to be. And I can try to draw a little picture here, but it's a little misleading. It doesn't look like, see if I can pass the New Jersey test here. It doesn't look like a huge chunk of the population is in New Jersey, but actually about 30% of the entire population is in New Jersey. We have small but dense populations where a big component of the population currently exists. And so a little about bog turtle, where they live and kind of how they live. Biologists are not often the most clever bunch in the world, so they are a turtle that lives in bogs. That was a pretty easy name to come up with, I'd have to say. One of their most characteristic features is like the big orange blotch on the side of their faces. You can see in this picture. You're really not going to see that on any other turtle native to New Jersey. Like I said, they live in open, grassy, and sunny wetlands. some people, I for a while didn't know what a bog was compared to like a swamp or what have you. Um, bogs and swamps are both wetlands. Bogs are typically open grassy wetlands, and swamps are forested wetlands that have, trees and shrubs in them. So bog turtles live in those more open, grassy, sunny wetlands. They are a very long-lived species as well, and so they can persist and live for 30 to 50, some even exceeding 60 years in age. They can exist in habitat for very, very long times. Um, they will just nest within those grassy wetlands, basically on top of grass clumps or tussocks, they're called, and lay, on average 3 to 5 eggs. Then in the wintertime, they will burrow into the muck under grass clumps or under tree roots, and basically spend their winter months in a torpor-like hibernation. They typically feed on, a variety of slugs and worms, berries, young shoots of plants and roots. Um, and kind of going along with their small stature, they also have, pretty small home ranges. On average, bog turtle only kind of spend most of their lives, those 30 to 50 years, on about a 3 acre plot. Um, in healthy populations or when there's kind of I guess unhealthy habitat and the bog turtles feel they need to disperse, maybe try to find more fertile grounds. They have been noted to move up to 2 miles in search of new habitat. But on like kind of the landscape scale, that is not a very very big area. I just have some pictures here. I was going to go through kind of showing you that classic bog turtle wetland. Um, Kind of hard to tell any of this exact photo, but you kind of see the water interspersed with the grasses here. I always kind of joke that if you're walking in a grassy, wet field and you start thinking to yourself, "Oh, I might not come out of here if I keep going," that's when you're getting into the good bog turtle habitat. That's where you get those deep, mucky soils that they need for their kind of their life cycles. And um, this is what their nesting can look like. And like I said, a lot of times it's almost like haphazard, just a clutch of eggs laid on top of a little grassy mound, really not even covered up that much. And then the reason they need these open grassy wetlands, like all cold-blooded animals, is they really need thermal radiation from the sun in order to stay warm and also regulate the temperatures of their nests. So once those wetlands, if they start to get too shady, too forested and shrubby, the adult turtles can kind of do just fine, but they're not kind of replacing their ranks because the eggs are not being able to get the heat they need to mature and incubate. Just another picture, like I said, if you say, "Oh, I might not come out of this one," that's how you know you're getting into the good bog turtle habitat. This is us doing some wetland restoration. We haven't lost anybody yet doing bog turtle work, but there have certainly been some close calls, so it always requires caution. To get a little more into what's ailing bog turtle and the actions that we're taking to try to remedy that, do like a little kind of habitat succession 101. So people like to, sometimes people think that, you know, natural areas are kind of static. They don't really change that much. A forest is a forest. A grassy field's a grassy field. A stream's a stream. But there is a constant state of disturbance and renewal and cycling going on in these habitats. Um, this in this picture it shows a fire as kind of the disturbance event. But it could be a flood, it could be a beaver dam, it could be a insect blight or a storm. Any type of event that's basically going to reset the clock, kind of as things go this way. Some sort of disturbance event is going to kind of knock it back down to that early successional habitat. Um, and so, yeah, bog turtle um, really persist kind of in this zone right here, that like early successional, as I'll keep saying, habitat, right before it starts to get too shrubby and vegetated, where it starts to get too shady for them to kind of persistent and reproduce. And like I said, they are long-lived turtles, so they're in this for the long game. They could be in a habitat for 50 years, and maybe 20 of those years there's not really good reproduction going on there because the trees have grown in too much. But then in a natural system, something's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of storm or flooding or blight that's going to kind of set that back and allow the turtles to start reproducing again. Or, in a good wetland corridor, they could find just another spot, within 2 miles or within a reasonable radius in which they can move along. This is that same picture, just basically as for wetlands. I will confess I asked AI to make this for me, and it came out acceptable enough that I decided to include it in the presentation. But you can see kind of to the left here, that's happy bog turtle habitat, that open herbaceous wetland over here. And then in the midground here, you have that starting to shrub in, not too much overstory vegetation, but starting to grow in. And then finally you get to the forested wetland habitat, which is a lot of times fine in and of its own, unless there's invasive species coming in, which does often happen, but just not going to be suitable for bog turtle reproduction anymore. And I have a photo series here, kind of showing what that looks like on the ground. These aren't the same sites, but they are basically just kind of the indicators or like kind of characteristics that we see. So you wouldn't tell we take we do a lot of our work in the wintertime because that's when the bog turtle are um, hibernating, and so we have a low likelihood of disturbing them at those points. But you can see open, grassy, sunny wetland, very, very pretty in the spring and summer. Not a lot of trees or shrubs. Then you kind of get to a mid-stage habitat where you see these like kind of tall, langy shrubs coming in. And also, just as a note, these little clumps here are the tussock sedges, which are also very characteristic of good bog turtle habitat, like good nesting and basking opportunities for them. And then finally, when you kind of things have gone too far, you get to like a fully forested wetland where there's very little herbaceous vegetation on the ground, and in the summertime there's almost no sunlight getting down to the wetland floor. And these pictures are giving away a little bit of the things I'm going to talk about later. But person with chainsaw is one of our big conservation measures that we implement on these restoration projects. Um, so I mentioned succession of habitat, but the other thing I alluded to was connectivity of habitat. So this image here is not for bog turtle, but it's actually for bobcat in northern New Jersey. And one of the things I might have mentioned, New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the union, and we have more than our fair share of highways, big roads that serve as barriers, either for wetlands or wildlife crossing. And so this kind of shows the different colors of bobcat that are very isolated, mainly because of high volume roads that are just preventing these populations from interacting with each other, breeding, and kind of finding mating pairs. And we see basically the exact same thing happening on a small scale level for bog turtle as well. I had a link, but I think I'm going to skip it and just kind of show you this picture instead. Um, this is a map from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Change tool. It stands for Connecting Habitats Across New Jersey. And they've done a fantastic job of mapping core wildlife habitats, basically areas that can support a suite of species, as well as, I guess, what you call subprime or less optimal habitats that could, theoretically connect those populations. So you can see here in green what we call core habitats, or the kind of the brown areas are the whatchamacallit, the connecting habitats. I saw somebody saying they're having a problem seeing it. Let me know if you're not seeing these pictures, and I can start scrolling through myself as well. Please try to scroll through myself. So, what does conservation and restoration look like? We have a interagency working group of federal and state governments, as well as nonprofit organizations that work to conserve this population across the state. Um, and then we use those organizations to work with our private landowners and leverage a number of different activities. Land conservation being one of the biggies. And I'll talk about these a little bit more, but putting basically easements on wetlands to prevent them from future development, getting them purchased by green acres, townships, or municipalities, state parks, and then actually us implementing restoration activities as well. So I alluded to these already, but the two of the programs we work with quite frequently are through NRCS, which Bessie introduced a little bit at the beginning of the presentation. They are the Wetland Reserve Easement Program. That is an easement program, as I said, that purchases the development rights to a private landowner's property if it has a agricultural um, history to it. Um, but that we basically NRCS purchases the all the rights to development of the property other than the quiet enjoyment of the landowner. and those easements can be for either 30 years or permanent. There's also the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, also called EQIP, that is more for just implementing restoration activities on a property that has agricultural history. Covers 75% of the restoration costs and does come with maintenance requirements between 10 and 15 years. And for that, also just put a plug in there. Maybe we can put it in the chat as well. If you're interested in those and you have a historic agricultural area that you're interested in and looking at those programs, you can check out. You can find your local state office within our CS through that link. Just showing you some pictures of some of the WRE programs that we've implemented in the past. This is a historic farm field. This was, I should say, it was not for bog turtle, but it was a wetland reserve easement restoration that we conducted, where the farm field was no longer productive anymore. It was just basically too wet, flooded too often for the farmer to use it. And then they entered into the WRE program in order to basically get recouped for the conservation easement and allow us to implement some restoration activities there. This is the kind of a map of just different vernal pool excavations that we've done. I'll go back a slide here to our heavy equipment. Basically, it's just through my program in partnership with NRCS, we go out to these sites and basically dig holes, basically undo the historic leveling and flattening and plowing that has been done of these wetlands over several hundred years or more, and try to get back what we call that topographic variability that you'd see in a natural wetland, where there's like undulations, kind of little deep pools and higher mounds. That just creates like a more native habitat that is going to support a variety of plant species and wildlife. Another thing I actually forgot to mention is prescribed grazing. So a lot of times we'll work with farmers that graze either sheep or cattle or some sort of grazer to continue using their property for whatever head of animal they have, but just in a way that is responsible and actually creates really good habitat for bog turtle. If you introduce a grazer into a kind of a wetland habitat during the off season, when turtles are not active in nesting, those grazers will do the work for you of cutting down the woody vegetation that's coming in, as well as stomping in deep hummocks that create really great habitat for bog turtle. So that is something that we explore with landowners, where they kind of get the best of both worlds. They get to keep their livestock on a property, and we get to improve the area for wildlife. And I said that before about the kind of the more on the ground, getting our hands dirty aspect of it. It's an unfortunate issue that, like, due to loss of habitat connectivity and loss of interruption of these habitats, loss of disturbance because of a lot of man-made activities, we have to go in and basically simulate that disturbance. Go in there, remove woody vegetation in order to restore open and herbaceous wetlands. A lot of times they are invasives that are, even if it was left as woody, are not providing good habitat value for wildlife. Since the colonial area, we've introduced a significant number of species that can be detrimental to wildlife, from Phragmites to Japanese barberry to kudzu. We've done our fair share to introduce pretty noxious plants in here, and so we're kind of trying to undo that setback succession and just allow those bog turtle a window of breeding in which they can kind of replenish their ranks and get some new babies walking around the wetland. And so this is what I just have a couple pictures here of what habitat can look like post restoration. So this is a wetland little corridor, maybe an acre or two tops, that had fully forested in with the combination of taller trees and shrubs that had probably been growing up for over 50 years now. And we went in with our working group team of nonprofits and state aid and federal agencies, and just basically worked to remove all that vegetation. Before we did this work, the understory was effectively barren or very, very minimal vegetation. And this is, I believe, the second year after removal. You see the herbaceous vegetation coming back in and really kind of greening up the area, making suitable habitat for bog turtle. And we only typically remove the really small stuff, the small diameter trees. These big trees that we leave in place, they're not really creating a big shading pressure on bog turtle, and they're incidentally creating really good habitat for insectivore birds or roosting bats, things of that nature. So it kind of just works itself back into the kind of the life cycle of the system, but more as a herbaceous wetland as opposed to a forested one. This is another picture, pretty similar, but and you kind of get the gist of an area where we've come in, removed all the woody vegetation, and after a year or two, we see all or mostly native and very beneficial wetland plants coming in. So it's very rewarding after a year or two to see kind of the fruits of your labors, see all these grasses and forbs coming in. You just kind of hope that the bog turtles are appreciating your hard efforts there. And so I described a little bit about what NRCS offers. Just going to go over what the Partners Program offers as well. We often work in tandem with NRCS, where they cover like a large bulk of the restoration, costs, technical assistance, and then we can come in and provide a lot of materials and staff time, basically for landowners that are interested in that kind of thing. We maintain a nursery, greenhouse, where we grow native plants and can provide them free of charge to landowners. If we evaluate the project and feel it could provide a benefit to federal trust resources. In addition to that, we could also provide native seed or herbicide, as well as staff time to assist with removal into invasive plant species, which is a pretty common problem in our wetlands and many habitats in New Jersey. Other than that, we do provide technical and financial assistance, helping the landowners, work out a game plan for how a restoration project could unfold. Look into what kind of permits or kind of local regulations we need to work through in order to make it happen. And then with the service, we do have some small scale ability for purchasing or cooperative agreements to kind of fund initiatives. And in addition to that, when I showed in some of our excavation pictures, we have a suite of equipment that between myself and my colleagues we can operate in order to get those projects done on the ground. Excavators and skid steers for doing wetland restoration, as well as tractors and brush hogs for converting like an old farm field into grassland or pollinator habitat, and kind of the cedars and whatnot that are needed to get that done. And with that, I will end it. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions that the group might have. I can check the chat. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody's time and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was wonderful. And again, I'd like to invite everybody that has participated. If you have any questions for Mark, feel free to take your mic and unmute it, or you can also chat and add questions that way.
Are they expected to like expand their range anytime soon? The bog turtles?
Since they're such a local species, it's really case by case. Do you mean like I guess within kind of New Jersey, or what kind of question are you asking? You mean?
I apologize. I live in like Cumberland County, right outside of
Oh,
their range. Is it like
yeah.
possible like there could be suitable habitat here and we can just move a couple here or something?
It's certainly possible, and I said Salem County. I'd have to check. It is that Salem Cumberland County area where we have populations.
Right.
Relocations are always a challenging and kind of loaded question. The question is always if they're not there, why not? And so it's always something that's been discussed. Either even captain breathing has been discussed, but really the first step is getting the habitat right. And so the thing we've worked on, especially with our kind of limited resources at times, is where are the known populations? How can we, since these are federally threatened species, where are the known populations? How can we make sure that they persist and also have relatively nearby migration habitats? Corridors and wetlands within 2 miles of an existing population. So it's kind of a slow guerrilla warfare tactic to make sure that those existing populations can keep reproducing, as well as having some migration spaces, because those habitats, as I said, they're going to grow up, they're going to start to succeed, and so the turtles are going to need either to kind of hang in there until a disturbance event occurs, or be able to kind of hop down the pond, hop down the stream to greener pastures, greener grassier pastures.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Mark, you do have a question in the chat. Annette would
Yep,
like
just
to ask.
Yep, I just saw
Uh,
that. Floodplains on the DNR Canal. I am not familiar with that area off the top of my head, um, and so I'd have to look into it and kind of let you know. The areas I described are kind of the bread and butter spots. I can kind of go back to the scroll through our general population map here. And so, DNR Canal is certainly within that green range. I just don't know off the top of my head if that's suitable habitat or not. But we have between state lands, federal lands, and Green Acres programs where a local municipality preserves properties. We do thankfully have a lot of those areas in conservation easements or conservation protections, which will hopefully protect them for a long time, for forever, essentially. Oh, great question, Sharon. There's a couple things you can do through the state DEP. Like if you've seen a turtle that you're curious about, the state has a wildlife reporting, rare wildlife sighting website that you can submit to. We can see if we can put that in the chat. But you can also just reach out to myself or the NRCS outside of reporting it to the state as well, and we can basically let you know. There is certainly more areas of wetland than there are bog turtle habitats, or I'm sorry, bog turtle populations. So there are more grassy wetlands than there are bog turtle populations. So not everyone has them, unfortunately. It would be nice. And Margaret asked, are bog turtles federally protected? Yep, they are federally threatened, and I should know this. State endangered, I want to say, but they are state protected as well. I just forget at what level they are. They are protected.
I believe it is endangered as well, state endangered.
Thank you.
All right, maybe we'll just give it one more minute if anyone has any additional questions.
How do you monitor the populations? That's a great question as well. A lot of that is done by the state, and we don't and we can't unfortunately monitor every population. But we have ones that we are aware of, especially if they're on state or protected lands, where we will monitor them through a number of methods. Just kind of old-fashioned searching surveys where you go through the typical places you might find a bog turtle. It is a rigorous process. For kind of being trained to be able to detect bog turtles, especially since they are small turtles, and a lot of times they are low density numbers in wetlands. It's a lot of skill, but it's also a modest amount of luck in order to come across them. It can be very challenging, especially in low density ones. But there are known populations throughout the state that we monitor on a regular basis between our working group. Some of them have telemetry markers on them, so we can kind of detect where they are, their movements, and a lot of them are found through, like I said, good old-fashioned searching. And then another question about old cranberry bogs. They certainly can be, especially if you look at the map I have up on here now that goes through the pinelands, which makes up a lot of where our cranberry bogs are in New Jersey. A lot of those were probably historically forested wetlands, but there's certainly herbaceous wetlands within the pinelands as well. And so that could certainly be a possibility. And then next question about acreage. Yeah, so no worries at all. It's on average, they live in about 3-acre kind of pockets of wetland. So relatively small areas. And yeah, they can disperse up to 2 miles in search of better pastures. But on average, their little wetland pockets are around 3 acres in size.
Mark, do you mind if I jump in and can add a little bit to the
Please do, by all means, Ben.
monitoring? Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Lange. I'm a working lands biologist with the NRCS as well. I work for Ducks Unlimited, but in my prior life, I spent a lot of time working with bog turtles as a consultant. In Pennsylvania, there's a nonprofit called the Mid-Atlantic Center for Herpetology and Conservation, or MACAC. And MACAC coordinates quite a bit of herpetology study across Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware. And as Mark said, monitoring these populations, one of the techniques is to crawl around in your hands and knees in wetlands that there are known populations and search for turtles. And once you find one, there's usually a U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologist there that takes biometric data on each turtle. Sometimes we'll implant a chip tracker into the turtle so that once turtles are found again, they can be scanned and documented. DNA swabs are taken from turtles, and then also turtle shells or carapaces, the top of their shells are marked with a unique marking. And through finding turtles, marking them, letting them go, and then recapturing, you can kind of monitor the population and tell whether it's going up or down based on a calculation of how many hours were spent searching that wetland each year, and how many turtles you found. And then you can kind of compare those population statistics from year to year. And it's always the most exciting when you find a very small juvenile turtle, because that means that population is reproducing. That's kind of like a coveted find. But it's also nice to find a really old turtle too that's been found year upon year. So that's just another way that, and that's all done through volunteer work. So people taking time out of their own schedules, a lot of times just volunteering, taking vacation time and showing up for these surveys, and participating. And so that's just another way that we monitor for populations. And then my last tidbit on the population monitoring. Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission does a lot of their own monitoring as well, and they actually just employed a camera trap study this year where they took something similar to a cell trail camera that you'd use for monitoring wildlife, game, and just pointed it down into the ground on bog turtle runnels. So bog turtles travel along runnels within wetlands, and they pointed it down to the ground and then captured movement. So every time that a mouse or a snake or a frog or a toad, but also a bog turtle came underneath that camera, a picture was taken, and then they were able to collect remote data. So there's a lot of tools and a lot of methods for monitoring populations like the bog turtle, but all of them are equally fun and interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. Great explanation. I moved my slide to this intro here, just so if you can see on that bog turtle in the photo, he's got like a little chip in in their carapace there, which is the marking system that's used to identify bog turtle.
Okay, well, thanks again, Mark. And thank you all for joining us this evening. I did put a link in the chat to the website to register for future webinars. So if you have a chance and would like to join us, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you all again for joining. Have a lovely evening, and you appreciate the questions. Thank you.
Take care.